It is indeed difficult to review a film like Animal objectively. The politics is so fierce, the ideas are so on the face, and the buzz is so loud that it becomes almost impossible to not consider aspects beyond the cinema. Political propagandas have mostly been designed that way across the history of cinema. But in our fast-changing world, it is no surprise that such polarizing stuff goes beyond agendas of party politics to social politics. Yes, the conviction of the makers is admirable, particularly in today's time of political correctness and cancel culture, to come out with such polarizing energy. But at the end of it, the film has to speak, not the courage in display. We will try to be objective to the best possible way in this analysis, as there are multiple aspects of Animal that are interesting, innovative, and more importantly, clutter-breaking. But it is just that the film is such problematic overall that the good vibes hardly stay. Not surprisingly, there is this notion doing rounds that Animal is not for the faint-hearted, and you would obviously dislike the film if you're not exposed to gory Korean or Japanese movies. Well, a lame excuse to shut up thinking minds, much like our psychopath hero, Ranbir Singh Balbir. The violence, bloodshed or gore are actually those aspects of the movie which work well and are executed effectively. That pre-interval long action sequence of the climax fight between Ranbir and Bobby are delightful as the rawness ebbs out of the screen. The jump cuts ensure randomness to the set pieces, the actors are left unhinged, and going by the tone that Animal sets for itself, you never know where these sequences will take the characters by the end of it. And then the use of Punjabi folk music and the background score by Harshvardhan Rameshwar, which is perhaps the most striking aspect of the entire film, and particularly for the action sequences. Arjun Vaili during the pre-interval bloodbath and Sari Duniya Jala Denge in the climactic fight brings in the much-needed pathos, yearning, and poetry to these sequences, which goes missing in most of the other sections of the film. And here lies the basic problem of Animal. It is a film so obsessed in shocking the audience and laying claptraps that it forgets the need for build-ups, character arcs, and the basic filmmaking from time to time. The innovative editing that throws you off balance in the way a murder is shown in the first half is also guilty of lacking control on the tiring runtime of 201 minutes. So much goes on in the name of the father-son dynamics, but there's hardly time spent in the backstory of this toxic relationship, its effect on young Ranvijay in his formative years, and the way he opted for violence in absence of other options to pick. Animal could have been a better film with more sequences between Anil Kapoor and Ranbir Kapoor to establish the birth and growth of the inner demon in Ranvijay. And that is why by the end of it you feel Ranvijay was not formed but manufactured for other agendas beyond what you see on the screen. The same goes for Bobby Deol, a startling factor rather than a solid plot point. Bobby shines in his few scenes, his menacing attitude speaks in every frame, but the screenplay lets him down big time, in spite of the very long runtime. The family feud and the history of violence needed to be established to build up the climax. The way Bobby, as the mute Abrar, is introduced, moving aside Ranvijay from the screen, who is finally settling to sign language after his surgeries, is fascinating. A perfect way to advocate that there are more human animals living in this world and within the family. A longer screen time would have ensured we understand Abrar better, and Ranvijay, in contrast, delves on the shadows behind the Nazi-like emblem of Shakti steel and then takes sides by the time the climax arrives. Instead, this entire film is portrayed from the problematic perspective of Ranvijay, who does things as it suits him, pleases his misplaced ego without any heed at all to how it affects his surroundings, and while his crude body jokes also find enough space in the screenplay, perspectives of other key characters hardly find any. So the problem is not with the volume of violence or a central character who does wrong things. The problem is that the plot points and screenplay of Animal is interested in building a world that is driven by power and ego and not real passion, even if it tries to make a case of it. It is a film that enjoys the showcase of predators without establishing the ecological life cycle that makes predators an essential part of it. Martin Scorsese might be one of the directors who has portrayed toxic psycho protagonists in his films over and over. But the films were more about capturing the time and space of its world, a satire on humanity and how violence and corruption at the end of it does not lead anywhere as these characters succumb to their own actions. Back home, think about things Raghu does in Badlapur, one of the finest Hindi films of the last decade, as director Sriram Raghavan demonstrates the fallacy of revenge and the vicious cycle of it. Perhaps it is this cycle that comes round in Animal. Director Sandeep Reddy Vanga's statement against the critics who bashed Arjun Reddy and Kabir Singh. "I will show them what a violent film is what we hear him say in one of his interviews during the release of Kabir Singh, and we understand Animal is that answer to his promise. But if director Vanga was frustrated with the criticism that Kabir's slap on Preeti fetched, his response in Animal makes the case against him stronger for the critics. There's the father who slaps his son every time he is disappointed. There's the wife who slaps his husband during a fight, as if director Vanga is pleading to put across his point that the physical violence of slaps is more about love and care and not the gender bias that the critics made out of his earlier films. And it was fine that way. But then, he pushes repetitive unnecessary sequences of hundredfolds of misogyny across the film, in Ranvir's relationship with his wife, sisters and everyone else. Perhaps his exhibit of indifference to the feminists and critics who he knows will be triggered by all of these. But when you declare a film to show certain things to certain people, you are already making them so important and in the process end up sidelining the filmmaking aspects for the sake of it. All those toxic flares of Ranbir would have been broomed aside to make room for building up the family feud, establishing the characters of Abrar, or at least construct the love-hate dynamics between Ranbir and Balbir. Instead, you have a man who suggests how women should choose their partners as in cave days and later wants to make all decisions for his wife, including whether she should remarry if he succumbs eventually. He admonishes one of his sisters for being inclined to a certain man and fires gun in others' college in his attempt to be a savior. He, despite his connections and power, needs to have sex with a mole to extract a secret in the name of familial love and then confesses that to his wife in his agenda of coming clean. And as for time and space, this is a film where the son of the richest industrialist of the country promises vengeance by murder on public broadcasting as regular factory workers and their courted managers clap for him. It is like two sadist men are at play here, and only one happens to be on screen. It could make all sense if Vanga would present this world as a futuristic dystopian society, where a mute man fights his deaf replica to death, who are brothers by birth and connected by violence and toxicity. But alas, that is not the case. Sparkling ideas only left to the imagination as the filmmaker is vested to more populist undertakings. So the question remains, what are we left with? The acclaimed performance of Ranbir Kapoor, right? Yes, the actor gives his all as everyone suggests, but with loaded set pieces one after the other, this is a role that is easier to pull off than what Ranbir did in Rockstar or Rocket Singh. It might not appear that way, but with continuous hypertones of the character, that is what it is. Anil Kapoor's is a more difficult act, we feel, and the veteran actor does very well in his limited screen time. Rashmika Mandana stays strong with few noteworthy scenes and her overall broken composure. But you really feel bad for Tripti Dimri, a better actress facing worse wrath of Animal's misogyny with hardly anything to give back. Kabir Singh or Arjun Reddy's arc and toxic masculinity was at least organic, if not politically correct, and thus you cared for the filmmaking. But in Animal, the misogyny is such agenda-driven and put for the sake of it that you feel that a good extent lies off-screen, and this film is just a tool for validating that toxicity. It is like an electoral campaign in remote India, where a local leader is entrusted to win votes of his mostly uneducated constituency with repeated hate speech, vile attacks on decency and diplomacy, unleashing animal instincts that morality encounters. Or perhaps it is all by design, a design that the new world follows, to purposefully create controversy, deal in binaries, and provoke polarization to ensure both sides are interested and intrigued and invested in stone pelting. And whom does it favor by the end? The producers and the box office. Like religion and politics, fundamentalism by calculation and strategy has now crept into our movies. Outrages are evident only to be drowned by the sound of cash registers at the box office. Hashtags will trend, but the count of people who will feel validated by what they see on screen will be a higher number, and not everyone will come out openly in liking the film. Sandeep Reddy Vanga might be a provocator, but his provocation is also coming from a point of strategy. That is all from us today. Thank you for watching.